And we are live. Welcome to the first ever Numerics Lunch and Learn. First and foremost, thank you, Patrick and Numerics, for having me today. Today, we're going to dive into demystifying blockchain tech and cryptocurrency. And honestly, kudos to all you viewers being here today, spending this fine Friday lunchtime with me, learning about blockchain and cryptocurrency instead of scrolling through TikTok. It's very inspiring to see you all here. So my name is Joshua Faier. My rabbit hole of jumping into blockchain started back in 2017 when I was an auditor at KPMG and I led our first ever blockchain client. I then joined Bitfarms as the manager of financial planning and analysis. Bitfarms is one of North America's largest cryptocurrency mining companies, and I am now director of finance at Sprout Therapy. The purpose of today's presentation is really to give an introduction to blockchain and crypto, but I do hope those that are more well-versed in the space will still learn a thing or two throughout the day. So let's start with a disclaimer. Exciting. All the opinions today in the presentation are mine and my own. They do not represent the opinions of my employer, and I'm also not telling anyone to actively go out and buy crypto or invest in any blockchain technologies. This is simply my opinion, and ultimately this presentation is for informational purposes only. I think the best way to start is to talk about some of the more industry-specific terms that I will be throwing around today. So these are the most simple one-liners that I can find for each of these very complicated terms. So for example, blockchain. We're going to be talking about that a lot today. Blockchain is a data structure that holds transactional records while ensuring security, transparency, and generally decentralization. We're going to get into this more, you'll see. Cryptocurrency is a digital or virtual asset that is secured by cryptography. And notice that I call it an asset and not necessarily just a currency, because there's more use cases than just being a currency. Examples of this that we see all the time are Bitcoin and Ethereum. Fiat currency is a government-issued currency that is not backed by a commodity such as gold. And mining or validating transactions is basically the process of validating transactions or groups of transactions known as blocks. And once validated, they are added to the existing public record or ledger, also known as a blockchain. So even though some of these are simple in nature, being one-liners, they could still be considered, a little bit complicated, but I encourage you not to panic. Do you know how TCP/IP protocols work? Likely not, but yet you use the internet each and every day, which is why I encourage everyone to not feel like they need to know everything about blockchain and crypto under the hood to be able to start learning, doing your own research, and maybe even one day investing. You should see today as a catalyst to your learning. And remember, we're only going to be here for about 30 minutes. There's only so much I can teach you. So I really hope that this inspires you to keep learning on your own time. And I really do love discussing blockchain and crypto. So if ever you want to talk, if ever there's something we don't go enough in depth, or if we don't have time to answer some of your questions, you can message me on LinkedIn really anytime. I am here. It's not a sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm here purely out of passion for the technology. And I hope that I could inspire some of you to feel the same way. So the first question I get asked all the time is Bitcoin blockchain? And I want to give a comparison to this, or a similarity of asking you, is email internet? No, but it's one of the use cases of the internet. Similarly, Bitcoin is used more of a storage of value, but that is only one of the many use cases that could be used with blockchain technology. There are many new next generation use cases that keep coming out every day. For example, you can do collateralized loans. You can do sourcing and supply chain tracking. You can do cross-border payments, ownership rights, and more recently, something known as non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. And we'll talk about some of these later. So I think the best way to show some of the value of what Bitcoin offers is by telling a story. So I want to tell the story of two very different people. One's name is Joe, one's name is Melissa. Joe is not interested in blockchain and crypto. He has 100% of his wealth in fiat currency. Melissa, on the other hand, believes strongly in blockchain and crypto and has 15% of her wealth in Bitcoin. Let's say Joe and Melissa both want to send 100 Canadian dollars to their nephew, Victor, who lives in Argentina. Joe is going to use the traditional methods of either sending a wire transfer or using Western Union to send the funds to Victor. The first step is the markup fee, basically, where he's going to have to spend a markup transferring or trading his Canadian dollars for the Argentinian peso. So he's already going to lose some funds there. Then there's going to be a $5 to $20 wire fee. Not only that, but Victor's going to have to wait up to 3 days to even receive those funds. Not to mention the fact that the Argentinian peso is highly inflationary, meaning that even though Joe sent $100 Canadian worth of funds on day one, by day 3, if Victor doesn't get out of the Argentinian peso right away, it's possible that it's worth significantly less by the time he uses it. So to avoid this, Victor goes to his bank, he trades his Argentinian peso for US dollars, which is considered more stable, but the Argentinian government has a 30% imposed fee on any exchange outside of the Argentinian peso. Now let's look at Melissa on the other hand. Melissa also wants to send $100 Canadian to Victor, who lives in Argentina. But instead of using the traditional methods, she decides she's going to send him $100 Canadian worth of Bitcoin. All that has to happen is that Victor creates a crypto wallet. Victor sends Melissa his Bitcoin wallet public address. Melissa sends Bitcoin to Victor's public address that he provided. And then Victor should be receiving the funds within 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if the network is clogged. But Victor can then, once he receives it, can hold, trade, or sell Bitcoin. And if he really wanted to have exposure to the US dollar, for example, he can buy something called a stable currency or a stable coin, such as Tether, which is USDT, or GUSD, which is basically any $1 worth of the crypto is backed by one actual real dollar. So I wanted to actually show what a transaction looks like. And I apologize because this app only works on iOS or on a phone device and not on desktop. So it's going to be backwards. So I apologize. So for example, let's say right now in this account, I have no Bitcoin, which you can see right here. So let's say this is Melissa. Melissa decides she wants to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. So you can see that is $100 for that dollar value. And she clicks buy Bitcoin, confirm. And that's it. She just bought $100 worth of Bitcoin. Now, she is going to want to send that $100 worth of Bitcoin to Victor. So all she has to do is click send. So just click on her Bitcoin, clicks send. And then from there, she has the public address that was provided by Victor. She wants to send the full $100 worth of Bitcoin to Victor. She clicks continue and send. And now we wait. It's going to take about 10 to 20 minutes. So ideally, we'll be able to see this transaction on the blockchain afterwards, but I'm going to continue with the presentation and we'll come back to this after. So ultimately, what ends up happening at the end of the day is that there is clearly one very cool relative and one less cool relative. Joe sent $100, but Victor is going to lose about 40% of that underlying value by the time he receives it up to 3 days later, versus his very cool aunt Melissa, who he lost no underlying value and received the funds in about 10 to 20 minutes. So besides cross-border value transfers, there's another very common discussion about use cases around Bitcoin, and that is storage of value. So as you know, during COVID time, the US government printed $6.55 trillion worth of fiat currency. And like I discussed before, in the Argentinian peso has about 100% inflation. They had about 100% inflation annually, which basically shows here, this is the Canadian dollar. $100 in 1915 is worth about $4 today. And the reason for that tends to be around money printing by central banks and imperfect coordination with fiscal policies. Ultimately, all of this money printing reduces you as a holder, it reduces your buying power. So for Joe in this case, he is losing buying power simply just holding fiat currency. In contrast, there's Melissa. I'm sure some people here have heard about the story where in the early days of Bitcoin, someone bought 2 medium pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. That today would be worth like 700 million Canadian dollars. I'm not even exaggerating. That exemplifies an increase in buying power over time. And this happens for a variety of reasons, which I've listed here. So the first one, for example, is scarcity. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Unlike fiat currency, which can just keep printing over time, 21 million is the cap. But it's also deflationary because yes, 21 million is the cap, but as people lose their private key or their passwords, or as people send funds to the wrong accounts, or as people maybe even die and don't bequeath their assets to their family, more and more funds are going to get lost over time. So 21 million is the cap, but it's only going to decrease. Halving is something a little more complicated. What halving is basically for people or companies who are validating transactions. As a reward for validating and supporting the network, they receive a reward or a Bitcoin reward. But every 4 years, the amount that they receive halves. And the reason for this is to decrease the amount of new funds coming in, the amount of new Bitcoin, as the existing pool of Bitcoin increases. So couple this with the fact that public awareness has drastically increased, the fact that there's new institutional investments from people like our friend Elon Musk at Tesla, it's only the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be more and more demand for a finite supply of a resource that has decreased supply new supply every 4 years. Institutional investment is just the beginning. Now it's some companies getting involved, but imagine when more companies jump on that boat. Or imagine if pension plans, for example, start investing some of their assets in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. Imagine if central banks start holding Bitcoin as a storage of value. It'll only keep increasing over time. Not only this, but unlike in the traditional banking system now, where you keep your funds in a bank account and receive 0.1% interest, you're able to leverage your crypto and actually do something called collateralized loans, for example, where you're able to lend out your funds and make 6, 10, 11% interest just for holding. So not only do you benefit from long-term capital appreciation, but you're also getting new Bitcoin as a reward for staking your tokens. So now that we've talked about some of the advantages to Bitcoin over the traditional system, I want to jump into what blockchain is as simply as possible. So blockchain is a software designed to let you transfer digital property without the need for any middlemen. So think about all the middlemen that we deal with on a regular basis: banks, payment processors, trading houses, brokers. You don't need those anymore when it comes to blockchain. You can deal directly with your end counterpart, and so it becomes much cheaper and much faster for a user. What makes blockchain different from a regular database is the fact that any information that gets validated on a blockchain can never be tampered with. You can never change anything that happened in the past. You can never change anything that is getting added currently. No transaction can ever be altered. Blockchain replaces the need for trust. So imagine all these middlemen are gone. All the historical transactions are validated. You know at the end of the day that the person you're transacting with owns the crypto that they have. There is no longer a way for counterfeiting. And you know that the person you're dealing with has the funds that they say they do. So why can counterfeiting not happen? That is because of the mining mechanism or the validating of transactions. So this is a very complicated topic. So I want to try to explain it as simply as possible, but this will probably take you more research on the side if you really want to fully understand. But we're talking here about validating transactions. Only when someone or a company validates transactions are they rewarded with new crypto. What this means is that the only way for you as a person or for me as a person to have Bitcoin or another crypto is either I get sent from someone who has it, or I am validating transactions. I successfully validated a block of transactions and I received a new reward. So because this is complicated, I want to show you something called a SHA-256 hash algorithm, which sounds complicated already just by the name. So let's say, for example, in this SHA-256, I say, hello, my name is Josh. This is the encrypted output that comes out. This is known as a hash. What's interesting here is that if I just add a period, it completely changes the hash. If I delete that period, it goes back to the hash that was there before. So let's take this and take it a step further. Let's say, for example, if I were to copy the abstract section of the Bitcoin white paper, which is this, you'll see that it doesn't matter how long it is, the hash is always about the same length and it has its own output. Now, if I were to go into this copy and I were to delete literally a period, it would completely change the hash. So let's take this again, one more step further. Imagine these are all transactions that have happened. What this shows you is that you can never change any of the transactions that have occurred in the past, because even changing one period or saying that, I don't own 1 Bitcoin, I own 10,000 Bitcoin will change the output. So what the validators are doing is they're taking the output of all of the transactions that have ever happened on the Bitcoin network, and they get a hash. Then they have the new transactions that have happened within the last 10 minutes. They are within 10-minute blocks, and they will need to do the exact same thing. They will put it in a hash, they will receive an output, and the last thing that they need to do basically is literally put in a random number. What they're trying to do is say all past transactions plus the batch of new transactions plus a random number will give me a very specific hash output. And it looks something like 0.0000005. Once that happens, it basically proves that all past transactions are accurate, all the current transactions are valid, and that's when the miner will get to append that block to the blockchain, and they will receive the mining reward. So once validated, the new block is appended to the existing blockchain, they receive their reward. It is a little bit confusing, but let me just keep going, and you'll hopefully it helps clarify. So there's 2 different types of consensus mechanisms, or 2 different ways of validating transactions that are most common. The first is known as proof of work. This is what Bitcoin and Ethereum uses to validate transactions. And what this looks like is a bomb-looking machine that takes the hashes we were looking at before and calculates to try to get that 0.005 output as quickly as possible. It's pretty much a race around the globe. The first person to solve that block will get to append it to the blockchain and receive the mining reward. This is one machine, but some of the biggest competitors in this space literally have thousands and thousands and thousands of machines all running all day, every day. It's a very energy intensive process. Just to give you some context, there are literally more than a quintillion mathematical guesses per second. So just doing this over and over again uses a heck of a lot of electricity. This is in contrast to another consensus mechanism known as proof of stake. So this is something Polkadot and Cardano use, for example. And what this basically uses is a combination of random selection, wealth, and age of stake. To put this simpler in an analogy would be, imagine you have your poker chips in front of you. What you're basically doing is saying, I am willing to bet all of my poker chips. I'm willing to put them on the line that I will honestly validate the next transaction or the next block of transactions. Based on the size of your stake, so the larger the amount that you're staking, and based on the amount of time that it's been sitting on the table waiting to validate transactions, that's when you are more and more likely to be the person to get to validate the next transactions. And similarly, as a reward, you will receive that cryptocurrency. So the most important takeaways here from all this is that blockchains are tamper-proof, and that's because each block is cryptographically linked, as we saw. Changing anything in the past will change the hash, and then it'll be impossible to get that 0.005 output we saw. So it's basically wasting your time trying to hack the Bitcoin network or to change any historical transactions. What's neat and what's very different about this system is the fact that all the validators are financially incentivized to act honestly. So it's very gamified. For example, in Bitcoin, in Bitcoin's case, or proof of work, you're spending a ton of electricity to be able to validate transactions, while in proof of stake, you literally have your funds on the line. If you act dishonestly, you will lose those funds and you won't be able to validate transactions anymore. So As new crypto can only be minted through validating transactions, it is not possible to counterfeit a cryptocurrency. So I'm going to go through this quickly, just to keep in mind that there are different types of blockchains. There's not just the decentralized version that we talk about when we talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are basically public ledgers available to anyone, open source. There's also centralized or permissioned blockchains. These are ones that tend to be created by a company and generally used for internal purposes. So an example of this would be Walmart. So Walmart actually uses blockchain technology for their supply chain. Put it this way, if they're dealing with lots of farmers for their produce, imagine what they can do now is that they can literally see every spot that in the supply chain where, let's say, a batch of beef got sent. So it goes to the truck, to the warehouse, to the final Walmart destination. They then find out that there's salmonella in the beef. What they can do is they can see, okay, which beef have salmonella. They can trace it back to a farmer, and then they can literally take off anything from the shelf that's from that farmer. There's no need to take away all the beef anymore. You can literally trace down from the source. Another example of a type of blockchain is consortium, very similar to centralized and permissioned. It's basically just a group of private companies that want to collaborate together. There's some other interesting use cases for private blockchains. For example, charities. A lot of people hesitate to donate to charities because they're unsure of where the funds are going to go. What charities can now do is that they could basically say, send us crypto, and we will literally show you every cent where it gets sent to. So now there's traceability, there's more accountability, and you as a donor will feel more comfortable sending crypto to these charities. Another interesting example would be Medicare. Medicare and health. Like imagine if there was a private blockchain for all hospitals around the world, and they can all share one record for all citizens of all countries. That way, when you're traveling and something happens, knock on wood, if something were to happen, they would have all of your medical records. They know what your allergies are, etc. There's no delays, there's no risks, and there's one basic point source of truth. So another example of a supply chain use case for private blockchains is a company called Tracer. In diamonds, for example, here, what they do is you can literally go all the way back from the source. So when it was mined, all the way to the end consumer that buys the diamond, you would know that it's a real diamond that comes from a specific mine. It's not a blood diamond, etc. So you have more trust over the supply chain of a company, and you're getting the real thing at the end of the day. So now that we understand the basics and some use cases of blockchain, let's talk about a very important topic, which is crypto safekeeping. This is becoming increasingly important, especially as the value of crypto goes up, especially as there's more overall demand and awareness. There's just more and more hackers. There's just more and more people trying to steal your funds. So the three main common ways of protecting your crypto are cold storage. And that's what you see in this picture. This is called a Ledger Nano S. It is a cold storage. It basically is a USB that plugs into your computer. What makes this unique is that it is all offline. So it's not connected to the internet. So unless someone were to physically have that Ledger Nano S, that cold storage, and know your 8-digit PIN, your funds are inaccessible. There's no way someone could log on or steal your when people control your computer and are able to try to take your funds that way. So it's overall considered more secure. You can also send it to a custodian. So this is becoming increasingly common. People will send their funds to a company that's literally designed to safekeep your funds. And they will use stuff like cold storage. They will also use something like multi-signature wallets that could be set up. For example, what a multi-signature wallet is that instead of having one person and only one person that can access funds, it could be more than one person. Or you could, for example, if a business deals in cryptocurrency, you could require 2 or 3 signatories before any funds leave the account. And that's a good way to ensure that you have controls over your funds. So it's very important that we learn from the past, and a lot of this stuff, a lot of these solutions come from past problems. The first one, a very, very famous case, was Mt. Gox. It was one of the first cryptocurrency exchanges. They had no cold storage, and ultimately the exchange got hacked and all of the funds got stolen. Quadriga is one that definitely hits home here for Canadians. It was a Canadian exchange. And what happened there was that they only had one signer, and it was the founder. He was the only person that was able to withdraw and move funds, and he died unexpectedly. So all of the funds went down the grave with him. So that's one of the reasons why it's super common and popular now to have more than one signer on transactions, especially if you are an exchange or custodian. Everyone's favorite topic, tax. And I wish I can tell you that everything you do, all the gains you make in crypto are tax-free. Unfortunately, that's not the case, especially here in Canada. Any transactions that are done, even if it's selling your crypto for fiat currency, if it's trading your crypto for another crypto, it's considered bartering of a commodity, which basically means that you're going to be taxed. So if it happens infrequently, if you're a holder of crypto and you transact once in a while, chances are it'll be considered capital gains, which are 50% taxed. But if you do it regularly, if you trade often, if you're a day trader, or if you consistently use crypto to buy assets, buy coffees, it could actually start to be considered business income, which is 100% taxed. So this is based on multiple criteria. I encourage everyone to go visit the CRA's website. I'm not going to bore everyone with tax criteria, but for day traders, be wary. You may potentially be on the hook for 100% tax. And a small other point is that selling or trading cryptocurrencies is exempt from GST and HST unless the institution that's doing the trading is a financial institution. My personal hope is that over time, as retail and institutional interest continues to grow, there will be favorable tax treatment that goes along with it, especially for us Canadians. But the good news is that there are alternative investment options, some of which could actually be tax sheltered. For example, there's a new exchange traded fund, BTCC.B, which is new in Canada, where anytime you buy a share in BTCC.B, they will literally take those funds and they will buy crypto. They send it to a custodian and it's stored. Whenever someone sells their position in BTCC.B, they will sell some of that crypto, which then gets paid out to the holder. So it's a very interesting way of indirectly owning crypto. Plus, the best part of it is you can purchase it in your TFSA or your RSP, so it'll be tax sheltered. Another interesting way of getting exposure to the industry is through investing in blockchain or crypto-related companies. So in that situation, for example, Bitfarms is a crypto mining company, and I see there's a question here about implication of mining, so I'll answer that in 1 second. But Bitfarms is an example of a cryptocurrency miner. So as you can see, they get rewarded, as I explained before, when you're a validator that's validating transactions, you're rewarded in Bitcoin. So in this situation too, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, so too does the revenue of the miners. So the value of, or the market cap of these companies tends to go up as well as people start buying into the miners. So about the tax implication for mining, it's an interesting question because it really depends. It depends if you're doing it as a hobby. So if you have a couple miners at home, you won't be taxed because it's considered a hobby from the CRA's perspective. But if you do it regularly or you have tons of miners and it really becomes a business, then it's business income. And in which case you tend to be taxed. If you're a business, as you get rewards is when you're going to be taxed. But it depends. It really depends because it depends. You can have discussions with the CRA, for example, where they will give you an exemption where they will say, when you mine it, it's considered inventory and it's only revenue once it's sold. That's probably the more beneficial way of being taxed or for it to be considered revenue, because otherwise it'll be revenue when you mine it. And then when you sell it, you'll have a capital gain or loss. So double transactions, always tracking gains and losses and revenue could be a pain. So the last another type of alternative investment option is something called non-fungible tokens, which have really become all the rage lately. So this is something called a hash mask. So kind of looks a little bit funky, but believe it or not, this hash mask sold for more than $150,000 US recently. What it basically is it's a company that came up with, or a group of people that came up with, there'll only ever be 16,000 hash masks. So similar to Bitcoin, there's a scarce number of them. Each one is unique. And what's cool about blockchain meets art is the fact that you can trace ownership. So by owning this, it's not just having a copy of the picture like I have here. Someone can literally prove that they own this work of art. So eventually what may happen is there may be digital museums where they're able to, you as an art investor is able to sell those or rent them out to the museums. Other interesting use cases outside of art would be example, let's say Drake were to come out with like a super sick beat that he didn't want to necessarily put out to the public. What he can do is he can turn that beat or that riff into an NFT and sell it. So then all of a sudden you become the sole owner of that beat that Drake put out. So there's a lot of opportunity in music as well. And the last example that it would be, a lot of people spend time playing video games. How much time do you spend playing video games, Call of Duty, for example, where you're unlocking armor and gun skins and all this stuff, and you can't use it off the platform. If they were to use something like NFTs and blockchain, you'd be able to actually have ownership of that artwork or those skins. And taking it one step further, if they were to make it, all their games integrated with the same type of technology, you'd be able to use that armor and skins in a different game. So there's lots of potential for this new market. I think right now it's a bit of a bubble. People are spending way too much money on NFTs. Someone spent $69 million on Beeple's work of art recently. So NBA Top Shots, yeah, that's definitely a good example too. NBA Top Shots is another example of non-fungible tokens where the NBA is selling clips of games, for example, and people will become owners of those clips because the NBA is the one selling it. There's a lot of hype, and the market value of those clips are going through the roof. Yeah, another example here. Someone says virtual hockey cards. Think Pokemon cards. Think any type of collection where you have physical ownership. The difference now is that how many exist. So it's a little bit different where, you have that one Charizard, but there might be 100,000 out there. Here, it's like, that there's 10. So you can see who the owner is digitally. You can transact digitally, which is much seamless and faster. And what's neat is that how many exist out there. So that you're like one of the 10 that own it. Someone's saying, how do you make an NFT? Can anyone do it? Yes, you can. There are platforms like OpenSea, for example, which I linked here, where you are able to literally just upload an image or a picture or a video or audio, and it can create an NFT on the blockchain. Keep in mind that it runs on something called gas, which is Ethereum. So you need to actually have Ethereum to pay to open a marketplace. And then all the transacting is done on the blockchain, which settles with Ethereum. So it's not as easy. It's not the most user-friendly right now. There's still some roadblocks. And to be honest, I really think that that's for blockchain and crypto and all these things to really become super mainstream, like where everyone knows about it, the user experience have to become seamless. And I think we're on the way there, but we still have a long way to go. I guess two platforms that I use, one being ShakePay, which you saw before when I bought that crypto, and I'll see if, hopefully it was received by now. But if at the end of the day after this presentation, you just think to yourself, I want to get into crypto, and ShakePay is what I use. It's a Canadian company. You can e-transfer funds in, you can buy crypto directly. And if you, use the referral link, you and I will both receive $30 if you buy $100 worth of crypto. And what I talked about before too is being able to lend out your crypto to receive interest. Celsius Network does that. And similarly, if you were to transfer in $200 USD worth of crypto using the referral link, we'll both get another $30. It's quick return, and it's an interesting way of, an easy way of getting into the space. So before we open the floor for questions, I just wanted to conclude and ask you, the viewer, are you going to continue to be Joe, or are you going to become Melissa? Joe watches his hard-earned cash lose buying power over time. There's many hurdles to cross-border transactions, and everything he does requires a middleman basically to validate that the person that that he's receiving funds from actually owns the funds. So you have to go through a bank, you have to go through PayPal, etc. Melissa, on the other hand, increases her buying power over time just by holding the crypto. She can also leverage her crypto through collateralized loans, for example, to make more crypto. And she can transact cross-border seamlessly, as we saw with Victor, and you get to skip the middleman pretty much everywhere. So I think it's important to remember that Bitcoin isn't blockchain. There are so many use cases out there to learn about. But it's super important at the end of the day to always do your own due diligence, not just in crypto, but in any investment you do. Do your research and make sure that you're buying into a project that you believe in and you think has potential. And always stay informed about new and best ways to keep your funds secure. The worst feeling in the world is getting funds stolen, so protect yourself. And at the end of the day, always be curious, always be learning. I really hope that I inspired some of you to take some time after this to keep learning in the space. You can message me literally anytime. And this is a new frontier with untapped potential. So get excited, be curious, and let's do this. And I'm actually, while I wait for questions, I'll open the floor to questions, but I do want to see if I received the funds in the account I sent it to. Let's see. Hopefully it happened. I sent it to a Binance account that had nothing in it, just to see. Ah, there it is. There it is. So Victor, in 30 minutes of watching this presentation, would have already received his funds. And let's see, are we able to drill down? There we go. Perfect. Okay, so this is something called a transaction ID. So what you can do is literally click on that transaction ID, and you can see the transaction on the blockchain. So anyone, anywhere in the world can use this transaction hash and see that the transaction happened. And this is revolutionary because, as I was explaining before, you can literally drill down to the source of all crypto. You know that any account that received funds actually owns those assets. All of this transactions, this one included, has been validated. So now you just witnessed a transaction being added to a block on the blockchain. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I know we went fast. I know it's a ton of material, but if there's anything at all, I'm happy to discuss, or I'm available offline too anytime if you want to send over some of your questions. Proof of work. Okay, so in respect to proof of work, what exactly do you need to receive rewards? Do you need a mathematical background or people like you? And I can do it with the right software. Okay, so going back to these, you basically you could use your computer. At the end of the day, you can use your computer. You could plug into the Bitcoin network by downloading a node and then running these computations. But the thing is like your computer runs so slow in comparison to these very specialized machines. So the Antminer that I showed you that kind of looked like a bomb, there's companies that own millions of them, or not millions, but like thousands. So you're competing with your very slow computer where these machines are guessing, a quadrillion guesses a second. So you just won't win. But what's interesting and something that's a potential is that you can join something called a mining pool, where you basically allocate your hash power, so all of your guesses, to a pool of people doing the same thing. So all of a sudden now you as a group have more hash power and more guesses. And if you were to successfully mine a block, you will get rewarded a proportion of your hash power. So long story short, to summarize, yes, you can get involved. Chances are, using non-specialized equipment, you won't make money. But if you're interested in getting something like this, getting a miner, you can plug that in your home and then get proportionally paid out from the mining pool that you're with. Do you only get capital gains tax when you change your crypto into fiat currency? No. So anytime you transact, even crypto to crypto, you have to calculate the fair value or the price basically that you're transacting at versus the amount that you originally got the crypto for. And this is something that's actually very arduous and a pain, for anyone in the space, because keeping a record of all this stuff isn't the easiest. But thankfully, there's more and more platforms that are coming out that help you with that. You can just upload your transactions through a CSV. You can upload that file into the software, and it tracks all of your cost base. It tracks, your fair value transactions, and it'll help you calculate what you're going to owe in tax. Is it ownership for the intent of increasing the value and eventually selling, or owning for the sake of owning? Oh, this is for NFTs. For the intent of increase, it really depends. Everyone's different. So some people will buy stuff like the hash masks, for example, because they think it'll increase in value and they can make a return. But what's interesting about some of the NFTs now is that a lot more of them have a utility. So for example, by owning the digital asset, you have access to a physical asset. For example, Foo Fighters came out with an NFT where if you bought, it was basically an NFT. It was basically an image or an animated image that was 50 Ethereum, which is the equivalent of like 100,000 US dollars. You would then have backstage access to multiple of their shows when you can just prove that you own that NFT. So I think that's going to be the major transition in this space, is going to be less so in just art that does nothing and more so in art that has utility. And some of them, for example, the longer you hold, the more rewards you get. So I think there will be reason to hold, and I think people will hold some, but I think also a lot of the hype in the bubble here is just people looking to make a quick buck. as an artist, can I sell work like limited edition virtual images and still have them available for viewing to the public online? Yes, but yes. So like, ultimately, yes. Like similar to like anything online, like I showed you the picture of the hash mask. Like I literally just copied that picture and put it here. So what I would say for you as an artist, the way I'd approach it is I would say, this is all my artwork. And like, these are the owners of them right now, and kind of give kudos to the people that own them, because I think the people that bought it will appreciate the attention. And I think you'll be able to still show your art. I think what you should avoid doing is saying, I'm selling this, but I'm still kind of going forward as if, you're irrelevant. You bought my NFT, but I'm still going to market myself. Like, you want to kind of make it one experience where the person that bought that NFT sees value in it. And I think that's where you'll build more of a following and more people interested in owning your artwork. There's a platform like Rarible where you can create, when you create an NFT, it's need to go to a minting process. And depending on the network usage, the gas fee to create it can be, yeah. So that's a big issue with the Ethereum network right now, is that gas fees are astronomical. And that literally, just for anyone that doesn't know, that's like the cost of transactions. It's very expensive. And right now it's an issue with Ethereum, and they're trying to find ways of scaling that will become cheaper. But it's just a matter of time, I guess. But in that case, that's kind of the issue right now with Rarible and some of these NFTs, is if you want to buy a $5, work of art, it can cost you $60 to just settle the transaction. So it could be expensive. But that being said, if you're going to start buying, $20,000 works of art, that $60 isn't relevant. So it really depends on the value that you're transacting. Don't try to sell something. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to sell something you're trying to give away for free, but at the same time, like if you're an artist and that's your job, like chances are you don't want to give it away for free. You want to monetize. You also have to keep in mind, actually going before to the person that mentioned about their artwork, there's a lot of people that are doing this at the same time. A lot of people see this as an opportunity. So there are thousands and thousands of artists. So you have to find a way to try to build hype and stand out from the crowd. Because it's possible, you're going to spend $60 worth of gas fees just opening your marketplace, and other fees, along the way, and then you're down $100 and you can't sell any art. So it could be frustrating. Do you only get complicated? I think I already answered that question. I don't know if anyone else has any questions. Out of curiosity, because Bitcoin is not regulated, should this be a concern for the future? So it's possible that governments try to step in. But the thing that's interesting about the way blockchain works is that Bitcoin, for example, all of the miners are spread around the world. All of the nodes, so the people that have the ledgers downloaded, are spread across the world. So even if one government were to try to intervene, Bitcoin and blockchain would go on. And another safeguard too, that's maybe a little complicated, is that like if the whole network, if 51% of the network agrees to make a change to a network, it can happen. So let's say, for example, if supercomputers were to come out and try to mine all the Bitcoin, what they could technically do, the network can decide that we're going to fork, which is basically create a subset of that blockchain and pretend like that never happened. So is it a concern? It could be, like, for example, I can keep answering this question, but India, for example, just banned, I think it was India, banned cryptocurrency, or they did in the past, and then they allowed it, and now they're saying they may not again. So a government could say, look, if you own crypto, we're going to fine you. Similar to back in the day when people held gold, basically they were forced to give up their gold, because if not, could go to jail. So a government can try to get in the way, but the aspect of it being decentralized will always kind of keep it alive. What's your thought with potential to hack in the future of quantum computing? Yeah, so I mentioned quantum computing. It could be, I guess, a potential risk, but what's interesting about the blockchain network is there's an aspect that I didn't discuss of mining difficulty. And what basically happens is, the way Bitcoin was designed, a new block of transactions is validated every 10 minutes. So if all of a sudden quantum computers became rampant, the difficulty of mining a block would also adjust so that blocks still get solved every 10 minutes. So it's not really a big risk because there's kind of safeguards around it. But I think it could have a short-term effect on the network if there's like one quantum computer. But I really think if someone were to invent a quantum computer, they'd probably try to like break into government stuff and break all encryption in general. Like, I don't think the first thing they're going to do is go for the Bitcoin network. and potential hack, sorry, just to answer potential hack. To successfully hack the Bitcoin network, you need to basically own 51% of all the hash power, which is like astronomically expensive now. So it's kind of unrealistic. Give me an opinion on Logan Paul's NFTs. Okay, so it's an interesting question. So at the end of the day, it's all hype, right? And people's perception of an asset. So Logan Paul's situation, he kind of just dropped NFTs of himself. It looked like a trading card, and he dropped a lot of them. So people bought them right away. And then the thing is he kind of didn't do anything with it. There was no utility. It was just a card. It didn't look like he was bringing out any others. It's not like he said, I'm making a trading card game, and if you own this, you have the strongest card. Like, there was none of that. It was just, here's a picture of me in animated version, and people bought it because of hype, and now no one really wants it. So it decreases in value, which could happen. And that's why everyone should be careful before jumping into the next, like hash masks or the next crypto punk or whatever next thing, that exists. Be careful, and you have to trust that at the end of the day, like, does Logan Paul really know crypto and blockchain? Does he have intentions of really doing anything with it? Like, I don't think so. I think he's just trying to sell his hype. All right. So again, you can reach me anytime on LinkedIn. Always happy to discuss this stuff. Like, I sincerely love it. So feel free to reach out. And it's really been a pleasure. I hope that this has been informative for everyone. And I really do hope that this gets everyone excited and gets you to start learning. All the best. Enjoy your Friday and have a great weekend.